Why hello there YouTube. We are back today with another video, and today we are going to be talking a little bit about CardFest. CardFest Vegas is going to be coming up in about 2 months time, and I'm super excited for it. We've got our typical lineup of Bandai card games with the culmination of what is the end of our second half of competitive season. We're going to be getting the nationals for both Digimon, One Piece. We're also going to be getting our Gundam finals as well, which is super exciting. So again, the culmination of a competitive year in the Bandai card game space, and it's always nice to wrap it up with everybody in the community. So I think it's going to be a super fun time. There are going to be LCQs as well, which yours truly will be participating in, though to be determined if it's going to be either in Digi or Gundam. We shall see. But regardless, I'm going really for the vibes and just to hang out and see people. It's always a good time. Like, shout out to like Risu, Panda, Eggman, everybody that we meet over there and hang out. It's always a good time. Huang and his crew. So I'm looking forward to it. If you guys are going to be there, do shout us out. A couple of the members as well from the channel will be there too. So should be a good time. This is the website. It's all up there if you're interested in registering for side events, LCQs, all that information's up there. Merchandise information will also be there. There will be some items that you can pre-order on Premium Bandai, so that will definitely help with some of the merch fiasco that went on at Dallas, but we're not going to talk about that right now. Today's video is going to focus on a few lists that I think are going to be big players, particularly if you plan... Before I kill my mic here, if you plan on participating in the Digimon LCQs as well as the finals if you happen to get your spot. Congratulations to everybody who's gotten their spot already. Great achievement, and I believe by the time this video goes up, there is one last regional in Orlando happening tomorrow. So for those of you playing, good luck. Hopefully you get your invite and we can see you over in Vegas. But I have talked enough about the event itself. Let's go ahead and talk about some of these lists that I think you should be watching out for. All right, so, I think we're just going to get the elephant out of the room now, right? This is Hudie, right? Hudie has been the, sort of the big baddie in today's meta. I think we all know what it does right now. We all know what it wants to do, and we are all probably a little sick of playing Hudie. This was a list that was piloted by Kanagi-san over in Osaka at their regional qualifiers, got top 4. And this is kind of a pretty standard Hudie list, right? Like, I'm not going to go over the cards in detail. Like I said, a lot of us know what this deck wants to do. It's, in my opinion, gotten towards, like, Numemon levels of both popularity and success. So, definitely a deck to watch out for. A lot of folks are clamoring it for the deck to get hit in some form or manner. Which, even if it does, right? Even if Bandai does decide to do sort of like a pre-Nats ban list, I still think the deck is going to be really strong, unless they go ahead and hit cards like Hudimon and Shakomon, which I don't think they will. I think the deck still has a lot of legs and will still do really, really well. Here we're seeing sort of a combination of these Hudie rookies and the CS rookies, mainly with the Terriermon, but honestly, this list leans heavily more so towards the Hudimon rookies, which still is really, really strong, right? The Terriermon is really good for the Tamer play, but honestly, I could see a world where they just like pair restrict these CS rookies, and the deck still does really, really well, right? So I don't think the deck is in a bad spot by any means, even with a restriction list, and I still think it's a deck to be careful for because I think it's going to be highly represented and it's going to convert. That's the big thing, right? Like, you can have a deck that is highly represented but may not necessarily convert a lot. I think Hudimon is going to be one of those decks that is heavily represented but also will do very, very well, just because it hits fast, it's strong, it has a lot of access to the best removal options in the game in Digivolve and DP reduction. A lot of decks now have been leaning, especially in JP. I think the verdict or the jury is still out there regarding the English side of things. But the decks that are running Ryuji and the options, I think, are becoming more and more popular over in JP. Ice Archery has taken the place of Volcanapalm, mainly because of the ability to stun Tamers and stun one of their Digimon. So in the mirror matchup, stunning a Digimon may or may not matter, right? But stunning a Tamer is definitely, pretty solid. So Ice Archery is definitely a card to watch out for. Comet Hammer with D-Digivolve 4 is absolutely insane. So this deck is here to stay. Like I said, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it. But I think if there were a deck that I would put as like the front runner for Nats moving forward, even with a restriction list, I think Hudie is definitely up there and definitely one to be careful for. Alrighty, next list here is Royal Knights. Royal Knights continues to persist. I think it's become one of those very safe and reliable decks in today's meta. It's still very, very strong. It got more support pieces with new Craniamon. You got a new Magnamon as well. A lot of folks are also sprinkling in some tech choices that we didn't talk about, like Dynasmon, for example, in BT23 that a lot of folks are using. We're also seeing the use of the Digital Gate Digital Gate Open card that was a promo that is very, very strong, being able to search at a Digimon and a Tamer card, and then being able to yeet out a Cool Boy or a Digimon Emperor for free can be really, really good value. So I think we're seeing a lot of folks use Royal Knights as a means to counter Hudie. So you have cards like Digimon Emperor, which prevent Hudimon players from pushing up their rookies. You have cards like Keenan Crier, which on play forces your opponent to trash a card or you'll gain a memory. And then opponents turn, when they play out Digimon, you suspend to gain a memory. So if they continue to do that on multiple occasions with Hudie, you have multiple Keenans out. It kind of reminds me of like the purple Kari that a lot of folks use like way back in the day with Secon, right? Where if you tried to do what you wanted to do, which is poke security, you get taxed for it. Keenan is literally the definition of Hudie tax, where it's like if they play out their plays, you just suspend Keenan and say, well, sure, you can do what you want, but you got to pay a tax, right? So I think a lot of Royal Knights decks are using Keenan to pretty solid effect. Because the deck is still devastatingly fast in its very own right. Like, you load up sources so quickly with the new Drazzle, which, interestingly enough, this deck is not running. Which I am kind of surprised about, to be quite honest with you. Because that card, for me, when I've played it, has been super, super gas. But this deck did really, really well. Got first place in the Hokkaido regional. So clearly it worked out for them. But, even without that Drazzle, like, this deck clearly was able to outpace a lot of its opponents. Medieval at 4, while paired with Craniamon, can be devastating. Or you can ace at 4 is definitely a choice. But it makes sense, right? Being able to say, look, I just need to be able to keep turn and swing for multiple checks to go for game is a very, very fair strategy. Because nowadays, you really only need to load, like, one Oryuken Ace and maybe 2 or 3 other Drazzle sources, and with BT13 Omni, you're ready to go. So this deck definitely focuses a lot on gas and does very, very well. So I think Royal Knights, in whatever sort of iteration you want to build it in, right? Whether it's this build, whether it's maybe a little bit more of a control-y build, whether it's a build that utilizes cards like Dynus and Drazzle and other pieces too, I think the deck is still going to be very, very strong. It's going to be a deck that you have to watch out for because it can still just blow right through you, right? So definitely be aware of Royal Knights, and let us move on to the next deck. Alrighty, guys. So this next list here is Jesmon. Jesmon, I feel like, rounds out probably the top 3 decks that I think are going to be the decks to beat when it comes to doing well at Nats in this upcoming CardFest. I think these, like I said, of the list that we're going to talk about today, one is a little bit more of a sleeper rogue pick. These 3, I think, are firmly have shown over the most recent meta course that they are here to compete, and they have also consistently gotten the most results. So outside of Hudie and Royal Knights, I think Jess rounds out the cake here. This is a little bit of an interesting list, but I think the core of the list is still very standard for a lot of Jesmon players. You do your Huckmon engine, which is just great for consistency. The new Huckmon, being able to search and then gain a memory, sometimes even double hitting off of this Huckmon, without bottom decking a lot of your pieces is huge. The new Sistermon Blanc being able to Evo for a reduced cost is also really, really nice. And the Sistermon CL being able to Digivolve when paired with the Awaken again is really, really strong. This deck takes that idea and like runs with it because they are really just loaded up on the sisters, which is fair, right? I think this deck really just relies on that one big play, and the sisters are really there either to augment that play or go through that combo, or to kind of stall out a little bit so that you don't have to necessarily feel pressure to move up too early or whatever it may be, right? So definitely a spicier list, but I think that, again, like I said, the skeleton of this list is very, very core Jess at its finest. The deck can turn to OTK you. Like, it can set up a board, and if you don't answer it, you pretty much lose. So it is a very strong, it is a very aggressive deck, and it is a very good deck. I think you definitely have to be aware of it. 4 Crimson Blade is a choice. I think in a best of 1 meta, because this was a list that was run over in JP, got second place at the Hokkaido Regional. Makes sense, right? I think Jess definitely is a deck that likes to high roll. Sometimes you just need to high roll that day and you'll do very, very well. Crimson in the right moment will definitely hurt a lot of people. It'll hurt Virus, it'll hurt Hudie, it'll hurt Royal Knights, it'll hurt Jesmon in the mirror. And you're going to be seeing a lot of those matchups. So, I mean, 4 Crimson Blades, while a choice, makes sense. Judgment of the Blade also is pretty interesting, but also can make sense in the right scenario. If you have to just get rid of a body, being able to just punch something in the face is never a bad idea. You know, and you run your 4 Masters or Disciples and the Sistermon training. So, again, it's a very solid list, more so leaning into the Sister engine, but the idea of this deck makes sense. I am curious that they are not running any Bauhucks. You are strictly running 3s and 6s. I just realized that as I'm talking about this list, which is a choice. But hey, I mean, it did well. It did really, really well. So hey, shout out to you for making it work. But a lot of lists will probably run the new Bauhuck, and I believe it's like the BT13 Bauhuck, if anything, to kind of help just climb up the line in that way and help gain memory from your Sistermon plays. But like I said, this one's leaning more so into the Sistermon engine. But that being said, deck choices aside, I think Jesmon as a deck is something to be wary of and something to definitely like watch out for at Nats, because it'll hit you fast and sometimes there's just nothing you can do against it, right? So definitely be aware of it, be able to play against it, or at least know what it does, because it's definitely going to be around. All right, and I mentioned a sleeper list, and this is that sleeper list or sleeper engine. This particular build was piloted by Shige over in Hokkaido, got top 4 at the most recent regional qualifiers as well. And we've seen a lot of Masty kind of creep back into the meta and do very well, both abroad in JP as well as in NA too. So I think Masty is a very interesting spot. I wanted to highlight this engine because we've highlighted a lot of like classic Masty engines on the channel before, but this is something that's become a lot more popular in recent times, and I think is really, really interesting. It utilizes the Dark Animal engine to kind of do what Levia wanted to do, right? Which was just like kind of set up your trash, play lower level bodies out to build up a wide board with your like the werewolf mode, the Cerberus Mons, and the Cerberus X. The Skull Belucci is an interesting choice too, but basically giving you the ability to unsuspend, I think, is what it's there for, and it pairs very nicely in actuality with the Mastemon as well. So the CS Masty is just a really good card. Being able to play out bodies, then on top of that too, being able to trash security stacks so that opponents both have 3, and then getting rid of a body as well is really, really solid. And the fact that you don't need to DNA Evo into it makes it, I think, a really, really solid top end for a lot of purple and yellow decks alike. And what's made a little bit of a not a resurgence, but an emergence rather, is the Tamer K. Being able to gain a memory when you trash a card to help set up your trash and give yourself more resource at the start of your main phase is pretty solid. But the main thing with it is end of turn, you can delete the Tamer, and then one of your Digimon may Digivolve into a level 5 or lower Digimon card with Undead or Dark Animal trait in trash without paying the cost. So if you can imagine, right, like, it kind of gives the purple Dark Animal engine, like, a pseudo, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Almost like what Fenrir did, where it's like, I don't care about the memory gauge right now. Like, I'm going to pass over the memory. But because you run a lot of memory gain inheritables with Gobly, with Labramon, with Dobermon X, with, you know, with those cards, being able to say, look, I'm going to simply, like, pass turn on a 4, for example, or pass turn even on a 5, like Cerberus, then go ahead and Evo into Cerberus X, play out a body, gain memory back. Crazy, right? And then when you also pair that with the Skullbaluchi, right, by trashing top security card, you can delete your opponent's level 4 and gain a memory. So again, you can easily just pass turn, Evo into Skullbaluchi for, you know, without paying the cost, gain the memory back, and then string along your combo plays there, right? So it gives purple a lot of, like, extra memory efficiency as if it needed it, right? And then when you pair that with Masty being able to play out multiple bodies, utilizing the Cerberus X and the Dobermon or Skullbaluchimon to, like, pitch security, restand, or Cerberus X just inherently restanding off of popping a body, you can imagine how many, like, crazy swings this is going to have. On top of the fact that the level 5 Cerberus gives things rush. So a lot of cheeky things that you can do with this deck, and I think it's a really interesting concept. I definitely want to mess around with it when I get the time, because it looks fun. It looks fun, and we've seen this engine just do well consistently over meta after meta after meta. We've seen Momin and Donkey Nog just absolutely crush it, like, year after year with Levia. And honestly, I didn't put this on this video, but we know that Momin's going to be playing Levia probably. I should just put any tournament that Momin is playing in, I should just put Levia on the list of decks to watch out for, because the man's probably going to top anyway with it, right? So maybe he goes for the three-peat in terms of getting into the championship match. Who knows? That'd be really, really cool and really, really fun to watch. But anyways, that being said, fanboying aside, like, I think this engine's really, really good. I think it's going to be a sleeper pick, but there are a lot of Masty fans out there. So whether it's this iteration of Masty with the Dark Animal engine, or just classic Masty, or even CS Masty, I think the deck has hands, and I don't think you should sleep on it. Is it going to be something that, like, consistently tops? No. But at the same time, we've seen it get results, and not just, like, one-off results. We've seen it top consistently to a degree in JP. It hasn't, like, won events by outright, like Hudie has, but it's definitely snuck into, like, top 8s, top 4s, top 8s. So I don't think it's a deck to sleep on. I definitely think it's a deck to watch out for, and I do think it can do some damage in the right pilot with the right matchup spread too. So definitely be on the lookout for it. I think it's a cool deck, and we'll be sure to highlight, you know, CS Masty and, like, Tribal Masty in another video as well. Alright guys, and the last thing I wanted to highlight here is this is the block of cards in BT24. We've gotten a fair amount of reveals already, on top of a lot of promos that we're getting with the box toppers, which I think are absolutely busted. And I just realized now that I didn't even mention Sakuya in this list, but I do think Sakuya is definitely one to watch out for, because now I'm thinking about the promos and the promo Kazuha that we just got revealed, which is absolutely gas. So Sakuya for sure is definitely going to be on it. I recently did a deck profile utilizing some of the new starter pieces, which definitely will be tweaked. Even just reading some of your guys' comments, I'm seeing a lot of changes that I could make to the list. So I'm definitely going to be tweaking that. But I think it's a good starting point for a lot of, like, players to kind of look at and see where they can go with the list, because the deck is going to be strong. But anyhow, moving back to this whole BT24 shenanigan stuff, we haven't seen all of the reveals yet, so TBD as to how this like Time Stranger deck is gonna work out. I'm very curious to see how it is gonna play out. I definitely know it's gonna use these rookies that we have here: the Gomamon, the Patamon, and the Demidevimon. All of these rookies being able to evo into a level 4 potentially for free is just too busted to not use. And I really do hope that Bandai decides to reprint these guys. Otherwise, the deck is going to be almost near impossible to play or just very, very expensive to play. But, you know, I'm very curious to see how these pieces synergize together with promo Agiomon. We've got Agio Chusmon that got revealed. And a bunch of really, really neat Time Stranger pieces ranging from a Marukimon. We got a Venusmon revealed recently as well, which isn't on here but looks really, really solid. So I think it's probably, from what I can at least gather here, right, is that a lot of these cards will probably... The deck will work and synergize in a way very similar to, I feel like, CS to a degree, where it may not be like a top tier deck. I think it's going to be a strong deck that has a really neat gimmick. But it might need like 1 or 2 more pieces to actually be like that next step up. And this is a whole nother topic for a whole nother day, but you know, Bandai has definitely chosen to go the path less of like tribal decks, like back where we had like Melga X, Wargrey X, and we had a bunch of like Garu pieces, a bunch of Wargrey pieces, a bunch of Galaxy pieces. I think now we're seeing more overarching archetypes. So like the Iliad trait, I think, is something that they'll stress a lot. The Time Stranger trait is something that we saw with CS. We saw it with Hudie, where it becomes more of like sort of like a thematic slop, for lack of a better way of putting it, as opposed to like true tribal lines that we still see to a degree with like the Liberator cards. Which, speaking of Liberator, Styrakomon I think is going to be really, really cool and a really, really good support piece for Medusa. I don't think it's quite going to be up there with the other pieces or the other decks that we talked about, but it definitely has some hands, and I definitely think that people will try to make it work. But yeah, to go back to Time Stranger, right? Like, I just don't know if it will be up there right away. I think maybe given more time or given a few more pieces sprinkled in, you know, in future sets, we might see a deck that actually can keep up with like the tier 1s of the meta. But I think for now, you know, the decks that we talked about previously in Hudie, Royal Knights, and Jesmon, they're all going to be up there. Like I said, Sakuya probably comes back up to a degree. I still think the other 3 are very, very fast, and almost too fast for like an OTK-esque Sakuya deck to kind of really come back again. Sakuya just needs that 1 turn, but it needs to get there. And I think Jesmon, Hudimon, and Royal Knights just do a lot very, very quickly. And that's just hard to beat nowadays in today's meta. So yeah, I mean, I think that rounds out all the decks that I wanted to kind of highlight today. Like I said, very curious to see how this Time Stranger deck does. But I think a lot of the focus is going to be on decks we've already seen. So be prepared to play against them again. If there is sort of like a pre-Nats ban list, I definitely will be covering it for you guys to try to talk about like, well, where do we go from here, and what is the competitive field shape out to be. But in the meantime, I think these are the decks to focus on. If you know how to play against these decks, or you know how to play one of those 3 decks very, very well, you could find yourself in a very good spot, I think. So yeah, let me know what you guys think down below. Let me know what you guys are thinking of playing in Vegas, if you are planning on playing in Vegas. And let us know if you're gonna be in Vegas. I think it's gonna be a fun time to hang out. I'm very much looking forward to just the hanging out and the community aspect of things. So for those of you going to Vegas, excited to see you guys there. And look forward to seeing you on that next video. Bye-bye.